Welcome to In Real Time, where we as Heights Church are inviting you in for real conversations about leading people, organizations, and change in the new normal. We're hoping that our real discussions about our church's journey will help you as you reimagine and rebuild yours. Hello, Craig here, and welcome to In Real Time, where we're having real conversations about leading people, organization, and change. And today's topic is part 2 of our conversation, leadership longevity. Well, before we get into that topic, I'm going to have our 2 co-hosts introduce themselves.
Yeah, my name is Tim. I am the online campus pastor and a teaching pastor here at Heights Church.
Perfect.
My name is Justin. I'm our life groups pastor, young adults, and our hospitality team.
Wonderful. Well, we are back and we're talking about part 2 of leadership longevity. So if you missed part 1, you probably want to go back and talk or listen to that episode. There is a reason we're doing this, and the reason is because we know that there is a lot of discouragement out there, truthfully, if we're going to be speaking truthfully, and we want to, in ministry. We know that the statistics from Barna are telling us that it's in the 40 percentiles that pastors are thinking about stepping out of ministry or leaving where they're currently serving. And that does not account for those who have already made a transition during the pandemic. And we're not here to cast any judgment on anyone whatsoever, but it did get us talking about the value of longevity at a certain place of ministry. Number one, staying in ministry as well over the long haul, but also staying in a certain place of ministry for the long term. Because there are a lot of benefits when we stay for the impact that we make. Yeah. And so I think it's important that we would run down that list again because, you know, as we started making the list of things that are benefits for us when we stay in a place long term, it actually became quite a list.
Yeah.
And these are things that, as far as I know, most pastors, if not every one of them, wants these very things. Yeah. So let's run through that list. We're going to go through it quickly this time. We went a little slower earlier and explained more, but let's go through it. Some benefits of longevity.
Well, the first one is legacy. You're going to leave a legacy if you've been in a location and in a place for a long time.
That's right.
Your impact of what God has done through your life is going to go on and on and on and on.
Yeah, no, it's so good. And we think about youth ministries, youth or student pastors, about 18 months was average for their stay at a particular church. Senior pastors, somewhere between 5 to 7 years. And so, there's a lot of turnover that's taking place. So legacy, though, stays or is built, I should say, when we stay in a place. Good. Some other things.
The long-term, deeper relationships happen when you have longevity. You know, the deeper we go, the longer we can go.
Yeah.
And that's not only just ministry-minded, but in relationship as well. And I think those two are connected too.
For sure.
So when you're somewhere in long-term, you have longevity in a place of ministry, you build relationships with the other staff and people in your church and key volunteers and leaders, and that allows you to go deeper in those relationships, which allows you to go a greater distance.
Yeah, so good. So we also talked about time to develop leaders more deeply and to see them grow and to flourish. Another one is being able to see redemption stories. I've been here long enough, 14 years now here after having planted the church, and we saw people come. We saw people who have left, and then we have now seen people come back for redemption stories, and they are walking with Jesus again, and they knew that we loved them because that's how they left us, and we loved them when they left, and they came back, and we're here still to love them again. And we're seeing that redemption story, God doing amazing work in their life. So there's that. We know healthy working relationships. That's a benefit. We've got strong culture, healthy culture in an organization. Obviously, if you're doing the turnover every 5 to 7 years of a church culture, That's difficult.
Yeah.
And with every incoming senior lead, you're bringing in a new culture.
Right.
A new phrases, new words, new ideas about culture are coming in with this new person. And so there's no way around it. It does happen. We know long term it builds trust. Trust in the congregation, our community, with the team, with the board, all of that. And we know also it allows us to truly build our dream team because it doesn't happen overnight. You can't just go out and hire a bunch of people and expect it to be that. No, it takes time for that group of people to really find how to work with one another and to become that dream team. These are amazing benefits.
Oh, yeah.
And I think everybody wants these.
Yeah, worth it.
Yeah, but we just have to practically say you can't have a lot of this unless we've been there long enough to let these things rise to the top. So that's important. And because of that, we really felt like this was something we wanted to address and encourage people in, because I know that there's a lot of reasons that people are thinking that they might want to leave and move to another place. But we wanted to think about the reasons we might want to stay.
Yep.
What are those things as well? And maybe that isn't a voice that's in your ear. Well, we wanted to challenge ourselves with this idea and then other churches as well. So in our last episode, part 1, we talked about spiritual health.
Yep.
And so that's important because often if our spiritual health is not in a good place, we are not feeling good and we're wondering what's going on, and we can attribute that to where we're serving in ministry at that church. But that's not the case. The problem is actually with my own spiritual health. So I need to make sure I'm making whatever decisions about staying or leaving based on spiritual health, and I want to be in a good place.
Yeah.
So for this week, we're going to take it a little bit of a different place for ourselves personally. And what is that we're going to be looking at today?
So our last episode, we talked about our spiritual health. This episode, we want to focus in on our emotional health.
Emotional health.
Where are you emotionally?
Yeah. So that might sound similar to people, but obviously there's a difference between our spirit and our emotion. So we went through 3 questions when it came to our spiritual health. And we have some questions that we're going to walk through today as well to help us to understand this. Because I do think that when it comes to our emotional health, that we have to recognize it as leaders that if I am not emotionally healthy, then I am going to, again, feel that something is off, something's wrong, and something is wrong.
Right.
But if I don't know it's me, then I'm going to think that it's maybe where I'm serving, and I might want to leave there to go solve the problem. But the problem is not there.
No, the
problem is with me, and I'm going to take it with me. So if I'm going to make a decision to leave somewhere and to go to another place, I want to do it from a spiritually healthy place and an emotionally healthy place. So let's dive into it a little bit here. And I think one of the first questions that we need to ask ourselves emotionally about just our own selves personally, what actually brings you joy? And we recognize it's difficult to really differentiate sometimes personal and ministry because so much of these two things blend. So I get it, but as we're talking, it might kind of be an answer that's ministry related, and that's totally fine. But it is important to know, what does bring us joy? How would you guys answer that question?
Well, I think the first place, it's healthy friendships. It's sometimes on Sunday mornings. I don't know about you, but I've had those mornings where you're like, okay, Lord, I just got to get there. I know it's been a hard morning. I'm tired or something. And I get here, and the moment I walk onto campus and I start seeing my friends, I'm like, hey, how are you? How you doing? And all of a sudden my heart changes. Like, it's just something about being around God's people. There's a shift that happens in me, and it just brings me great joy. By the time Sunday's over, I'm like, that was the best day ever. I love it. It's a lot of fun.
Leave energized.
It does. Yeah. I leave energized on Sunday mornings, and it's because of the friendships that I've developed over the years. And then you also hear the stories, the really healthy stories that come out of that. And I love hearing stories that God has done some work in somebody's life, or there's this new thing that they're leaning into in their faith, and they're leaning into chairs. I mean, we can go on and on about that
Yeah.
stuff, but that is what really brings me joy, is watching people really lean into their faith and then the friendship that comes from it. I mean,
Yeah.
like you said, it's hard to differentiate the friend, the family, the outside of church, because this is my world. This is
Yeah.
the world I operate in.
Yeah. Yeah. For
I mean,
sure.
even this morning, my gym had a conversation about our church. Like,
So I love
I mean,
that. Yeah.
we're in the middle of stretching, and people are being invited to our Easter services because there are several of us that go there, and so
Love it.
they just bleed together.
So good. Yep.
Yeah.
That's how it is. I love it. What about you? What is it that brings you joy, Tim?
Yeah, in my new role, I think what brings me a lot of joy is the team operating in their giftedness. So I'm in a position where I'm overseeing ministries. On some Sundays I support as a teaching pastor, but the majority is working with some of the teams that are functioning on Sundays.
Yeah.
And I love watching our worship team in their giftedness, the security team, which I oversee, or safety team, they're really looking to serve others, from children's ministry. So when I get to step on campus and see everybody, just working that synergy, that just all of that brings me joy, because I know that as a team, because we have these deep relationships, because people on our staff have been here a long time, that I know they're literally living out their calling.
Yeah.
We're doing it as a team, and it's all about kingdom. And so just watching that is awesome.
Oh, I love
that. Brings me joy. I have a unique space, and it's awesome.
Yeah. And this is an important question, because if we don't know what brings us joy, then it's difficult to tap into that joy. That joy motivates us. That joy brings obviously just, an amazing feeling and satisfaction to our life. And so it's important that we know what that is.
Right.
And so I'd say for me, it's the stories of people. And, I was, when I got home yesterday, I told my wife, I said, oh my gosh, I heard so many amazing stories today, and I'm just rattling them off. It was like, yesterday was the story day. I mean, I had 8 different people telling me amazing stories of what God's doing in their life, decisions that they've made that are now impacting them and their family. It's incredible to see. And some of them are like, hey, I did this over the last 2 weeks and it's making this difference. And others, there was a couple who 3 years ago, we made this decision. You remember when you prayed with me? And well, that stuff's now out of my life. And look at the impact. And his wife's sitting next to him. And she's just, got this grin on her face, like, I can't believe this is my husband, And they're just, they're talking about how they're helping their kids and reading scripture to their kids. And I mean, I love this stuff. And this is why we do what we do.
Yeah.
But if we don't know what brings us joy, then we don't tell those stories. Right? And honestly, I've been on other church staffs, and we rarely shared any stories. I mean, it was actually, when I look back on it now, I mean, we didn't do it on purpose. It's just we didn't have time for it. And now I realize that's how we get encouragement. I mean, let's feed that. That's the goal. And so let's just talk about hitting that mark time and time and time and time again when God does something wonderful, and he got to use even us in order to do it. So that helps me emotionally, for sure.
Right.
Now, the next question is a really important question, and it's one that every leader needs to ask themselves. And there is an answer. There is an answer for every leader that we need to get to.
Yeah.
So what is that question?
What wounds do you carry?
Yeah, what wounds do you carry? And it's not, hey, do you have any wounds?
No.
No.
It's what wounds.
Yeah.
Not do you have any.
Right. Yeah, we all carry wounds.
Absolutely.
There's just no way around it. We can't deal with this many people, solve these many problems, get in the mix of this much conflict, which we do. I mean, there's conflict in families, between people, within the church, outside the church. There's a lot, and we get in the middle of it. Sometimes your hand gets bit.
Yeah.
Sometimes things happen.
Yeah. That's
Sometimes it's not personal. Sometimes it is. But wounds have a way of collecting over time, right?
true. Yeah.
Yep.
They can.
Yeah, they can. They can. They don't have to, but they can. And unfortunately, they do very often in leaders because we're so busy. It's not always a bad thing. I'm not like chastising people. I'm just saying oftentimes we're so busy serving other people. There's a lot of demands on our time, and many people are bivocational as they're leading churches. That's not a lot of time to sit and to ponder wounds in our life, right? But it's an important thing for us to do in order to remain healthy. Because we're gonna acquire wounds for sure. So if we don't know about this, then it's easy for us to take that wound that's personal and assume that wouldn't happen in another place, and that we leave this place to go there, only to find that no, we collect wounds here too.
It's the nature of people.
You bring one with you.
Yeah, and it's not just churches; it's life. It's any place you work. It's families that we live in. So let's be straight about that. But so when we talk about this, specifically the wounds that we carry, there's a couple of questions we listed under this one as well. What are those?
Well, one, do you have any? And that's really that's not really. I mean, we know we have wounds.
We do. Yeah.
So it's just really a starting point to start that reflection of what are my wounds that I have.
Yeah.
And especially when we're talking about longevity, very rarely is a pastor in one place forever from start to finish.
Right.
And a lot of times those transition periods cause wounds and how things were or were not handled or said or not said or how you were treated, good, bad, the ugly. And sometimes you just move right on to your next post as a pastor, and you just immediately get into ministry building, setting new culture, doing whatever that you need to do.
Yeah.
And I mean, just this last year, around the same time when I had my sabbatical, I spent some time, in soul care, right?
Yeah.
And that just brought out these wounds that I had been carrying for 15 years and never really tied those things together.
Yeah.
Of why I act the way I do or I perceive things the way I do.
Yeah.
And I really had to dig deep. Even after sabbatical, Justin and I kind of connected and we started processing more of soul care and just kind of talking through, and he was going through the book and I was going through the book. And so sometimes you don't know they're there. And so you have to do something to resolve them.
Yeah.
We all have wounds. They will surprise you. I never thought I would connect those dots.
Yeah.
And once I did, like the next question is, what can I do to resolve them?
Yeah.
There is work to be done. There are resources out there. There are people to meet with. There
Healing to be had.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, there is. Yeah, because God, those things that wounded us, that isn't my identity, but it can become your identity. And you may not even know it.
Yes.
It's true.
So you've got to identify it, figure out what those things are, and then do the work.
Yeah.
Because they are there.
Yeah.
There always will be there. And it could have been a comment, conversation, a betrayal, a perceived betrayal. I mean, it could be a long list.
Yeah.
So there are wounds, and you have to do the work.
Yeah.
If you want to move through longevity, because it's not something you just get to like shoulder and go, it doesn't have an impact. It has a huge impact.
Yeah.
Huge
Yeah.
impact.
And not just for longevity in ministry, but just for your own emotional
For my
health.
emotional
and
health.
your own family, your friends, all these people in your life.
Yeah.
You're going to want to get emotionally healthy for all those reasons. And then, by the way, it also helps you with ministry longevity, leadership longevity. So good. I love that.
I always think about this piece,
that.
and there's two things that I think of. One is the brilliant quote from your wife, Becky, which is that there are no long-term relationships without forgiveness.
Yeah.
I've got to choose to forgive because, one, that's what God told me to do, right?
Yeah, that's
Keep
true.
short accounts. So I got to do that. That's part of it. But the other thing I have to do is I have to grieve sometimes. And grief is a process.
good, yeah.
I have to grieve the loss of something I either perceived was a certain way or the loss of something real. We came out of the pandemic and I had a lot of grieving of relationships because people were gone, and you're constantly wondering, well, is so-and-so still here? Oh, no, they moved. Oh, okay. Thanks for saying goodbye.
Yeah.
There was a lot of that going on.
Right,
So
there
it was, I had to allow my heart the space to grieve and be sad about those things because they were loss.
They were.
And so that's part of being emotionally healthy
right.
is giving yourself permission to say, it's okay that I'm sad.
Yeah.
I don't have to be on. I don't have to be the spiritual rock here.
Yeah.
Because there are places in my life that I can process this information with my spouse, with other people in my life. And that goes back to the other question that you have is, who's that person in your life that you can talk to about these things?
Yeah.
Who's that mentor? Who's that friend that will give you sound, biblical, godly, friendly advice and the truth, not just sugarcoat it and say, oh, like I don't need you to blow smoke at me. I need the truth in the midst of this.
That's right.
But I also need grace in the midst of this. So, you've got to have that person in your life. And so,
that's good.
Man, I'd say if you don't, man.
Well, if you don't, I would also suggest a counselor. There's nothing wrong with going to a counselor, but just making sure that this is someone who, can understand a biblical perspective, a Christian perspective about where you're at to help you get to true healing in a wonderful, good place. So, yeah, I know many pastor friends who don't actually feel comfortable with talking about this with other peers or people at their church. So they have a counselor that they actually go to, and there's nothing wrong with that. It's a great thing. It's a lot better than trying to do it by ourselves.
Right.
Yeah, so I think that's really, really important. That's good. So when we're talking about these idea of the wounds, I do think that we all need to realize we have them.
Yep.
And now it's just a question of how good are we at bringing them to a healthy healing place. And I hope that we are. And if we're not, we want to encourage you to do so, because we know that whether you stay or whether you go, whether you stay in ministry or you step out, that wound's going to just stay with you anyway. So let's just get it healed, and then let's make a better decision out of a healthy place.
Yeah.
So here's where I wanted to kind of wind this conversation up, was this last part, and it's the question of then what frustrates you? Because this is another part of that emotional health. If I'm frustrated, it's easy for me to attribute that to outside places or sources, and maybe that is the case. Because often if I know what brings me joy, I know about the wounds, and I'm being honest with myself about these things, then it comes to what's frustrating me right now. If I can identify what those are, then I'm a lot better off being able to solve them. But if I'm just dealing with, I'm just frustrated, which means I'm just mad and I'm becoming embittered and unforgiving and cynical and jaded, I'm going down that road. Well, there's another road. How about, can we fix it?
Right.
Yeah.
Can we do something? Because here's the thing. What I know is if I remain frustrated, then I'm very likely to just leave.
Yeah.
I'm going to leave. I'm going to go to another place. And we think it's going to be better there. It won't be. You're going to have a whole nother set of frustrations. What's better is if we can do something to resolve the frustrations. And so I wanted to throw out a couple of things here for us, rather than just quietly disappear or, set off a bomb and disappear and create all kinds of conflict in a place. What can we do to resolve the frustrations? And I'm going to speak specifically to senior leads. There are things that can be done if where you're currently serving is frustrating you. There are people to talk to. There are staffs to work with. There are boards to talk with. There are church people, community that we can interact with. And to be honest with you, if it's frustrating you, there's a really good chance it's frustrating them.
Right.
They just need someone to step up and to say, can we have the conversation? I don't know all the answers, but can we fix it?
Right.
So a year and a half ago, I was frustrated that we were financially not hitting any of our goals, and we were going to have to make some huge, huge cuts that were going to devastate Heights Church. I was frustrated about it. I wasn't mad at people, but I was frustrated about the situation. So you either step in to resolve it or you just make the cuts. Well, that's going to be very frustrating as well. So what we did is I began talking with the board. I talked with the staff, you guys, and said, how can we then solve this frustration rather than living with it?
Right.
Because we thought it was something we could solve. We could resolve it. And fortunately, a year and a half later, we have. And we're in a way different place. But that could have been a frustration that I know other people have actually just walked away instead of trying to resolve it, talking to the right people that are a part of the solution as well. So I wonder if there are people who can help you resolve it, fix it, or manage it. So are you talking to those people, and can we start there first?
Yeah.
Rather than looking for the eject button.
Right. Because like you said earlier, if you're feeling the frustration, there's a high likelihood that others are feeling it too.
Yeah.
And so therefore, if you guys can have that discussion instead of just assuming it can't be fixed, or, sometimes we look at a frustration or rub and we're like, it's too much work or that'll never happen. We will assign it a destiny, right? We'll just assign it something.
Yeah.
And the reality is maybe everybody else is feeling it. So you got to have those conversations. Again, that longevity we talked about that builds that trust allows you to have that conversation.
Oh, it's good. True.
In a way that's healthy and safe. You just might find that you, as a team, you're ready to solve that problem.
Yeah.
Because everyone else is feeling it too. Your board might be feeling it. Your staff is feeling it. And so start to begin to have those conversations and, be careful that it doesn't become gossip or talk behind anyone's back. I think that's also wise as well.
Yeah.
But it's like, make sure your heart is in the right place. Let's have these conversations. You're feeling it too. Okay, let's address it in love and care and see what happens and be open to it. And when you kind of can put all that together, then you'll see change.
Yeah, you will.
You will see change happen. Now, I know you get to a spot where that maybe change isn't going to happen, and it's just is what it is, and then you have to cross that bridge, and you have to weigh that out with discernment.
Yeah.
But likelihood, if you've built that trust, you have your team in place, you're having open communications, man, move forward and just do it and trust one another.
Yeah.
And as a staff member, speaking as staff to a senior lead, I also need you to be able to hear it, weigh it, and then weigh in.
Yeah.
Right. And then that
good.
may mean, whatever that is, but it could be I'm for you or I can't do anything. But I need you to step in too.
That's good. That's good. Yeah.
I also think there's another step in the midst of this dealing with frustration piece that I have to step back from it first and go, okay, frustration is a secondary emotion to something. And it's usually my expectations.
Yeah.
I have to ask the question, what are my expectations of the situation? Is it something that is actually tangible, fixable, or is it an unrealistic expectation that I've placed upon so-and-so and I haven't given them the tools to do what they need to do?
Yeah.
Haven't given them the permission, haven't given them the power to execute what it is that I think should be done.
Yeah.
So I have to ask myself the question first, okay, what are my expectations here?
Yeah.
If I don't ask that question, I can easily just stay frustrated with the situation.
Yep.
Because I'm leaning into something that's just not realistic because there isn't the infrastructure or there isn't the person or there isn't the thing in place or the system to actually do what I need it to do. When we do that expectations lab during the summer last year, that was one of the things we talk about is this is one of those little red flag tells that you have an unrealistic expectation because you're frustrated.
Yeah.
So it's a great tell to tell me, okay, I need to step back and go, what's going on with my expectations with these people? But in the case with...
And that could be with a board, a staff, the people of the church,
and maybe
a one-on-one person.
Maybe the situation just is, and it's not about, like, it's a frustrating situation because I don't have a solution for it, or it needs a solution that we don't have yet.
Yeah.
Because we haven't had the conversation.
Right.
So
it's good.
I know that for me, that's the first step I have to do before I try and approach those things. Because sometimes I can go, wait a minute, that's actually just me.
Yeah.
I'm thinking unrealistically of so-and-so, and I don't need to do that to them. I actually need to train them. I need to develop them. I need to have a conversation with them and help them grow.
Yeah. It's good. It's good.
So
Yeah, and as you talk about, there's two things that come to my mind, and you may say, "Well, I don't have the trust with my board," which is what a lot of senior leads would say. I don't have the trust with my board, and I would say maybe you don't, but maybe this is how you get it. If you would lead them through this frustrating situation, this could be how you build that trust. And here's where I say we start. Let's revision what we want this to look like. Instead of pointing out this person did this or that, how about let's just talk about what, in our case, when it came to the finances, which was deeply frustrating, and I know that, well, pretty much every church I'm aware of is having financial difficulty in today's time frame. We were able to say, what if we could revision this and we did have enough finances? What would it look like? And we had a great conversation about that. Yeah. And then we had the conversation about how can we get there? There was no pointing of fingers.
No.
There was just, yeah, we all want that.
what do we do?
Yeah. How can we get it? And we devised a plan, and boom, we started making it happen.
Yep.
Didn't happen in days or weeks, but it did happen in months.
Right.
And now we're a year and a half after that, and God's done some great things, but we had to revision it.
Yeah, it's like that's painting
That's
the
right.
vision.
And we built trust through that whole process as well.
And you did it together.
We did it together.
Because they were also feeling, this is a frustrating part.
Yeah.
And dreaming it together, painting that beautiful picture of what it would look like, then allowed you then to step back, okay, well, what we're currently doing is not going to get us there.
Yeah.
So what do we have to do to move it forward so that
Right.
we can achieve that beautiful picture that you took?
Yeah.
I think
so
the
good.
cautionary tale with frustration is it can turn into bitterness too. I have friends who have been in ministry frustrated with things. They didn't get the answer they wanted from the board or someone like that, and it turned into bitterness in their heart. And instead of dealing with the bitterness, instead of letting God heal that spot, they're no longer in ministry. They decided not to just to leave, but they stepped out of the thing that God had called them to, and that's even more heartbreaking. Don't let frustration turn into bitterness, because once that takes hold, man. It'll kill your soul. It'll kill your emotions. It'll kill all of the things that God wants to do with your life.
That's a wound that we need to tend to.
Big time. Big time.
Yeah, and it'll kill that longevity.
It will. It will. So there's a lot at stake when we talk about the benefits of longevity, and that's why these things are so critically important.
Yeah.
And it all starts with me so that I can be the healthiest leader possible as I am walking through these issues, these problems, these challenges, and I can help lead the way and help others as well. So this has really, really been a great conversation, guys. Thanks for sharing this with us. And obviously, one last thing here about this before we move into the challenge is that if we do have people who are toxic, right? A toxic staff member, a toxic volunteer, we need to address that. We need to solve it. We need to resolve it. Maybe we might need to let them go. If that's the answer, because there's no other resolve, then let's make the decision. I'm pretty sure if I were to ask you guys the question, do you want me to solve toxic people problems? Your answer might be yes.
Absolutely.
100%.
Emphatically.
Yeah. And my request to you is that if they're on your team, I want you to do the same. Yes?
Right.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. So we get to do it together.
Yep.
This is what we do as a team. Yeah. So our challenge for this is we're wrapping it up about leadership longevity, part 2, and we are going to have a part 3. But today, what about your spiritual health and emotional health needs attention?
That's good.
Well, there's also, if there are frustrations, let's move to resolve them.
Yep.
Who are those people that could help? Let's pinpoint what they are, and let's go about fixing them. That's better than just assuming nothing will get fixed and leaving a place to go to another place.
Yeah.
Okay. Hey, thanks for having a real conversation about leading people, organization, and change. And if you like this episode, please hit like or subscribe and the bell notification so you get each podcast as we post them. And we can't wait until we get to see you for part 3 of Leadership Longevity.